What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Nurture Network podcast, where we aim to inspire people to start the things that they've always wanted to do, right? That's what it's all about. And a lot of people are still fearing judgment, still have that lack of self-belief. But the guests that come on here and the conversations we have are essentially for you to take that leap and help you do it. So, in this episode, we have an incredibly special guest. I'm so excited to actually introduce you to him because I've already had a couple of conversations with him, and you may know him already as the airport guy, Motivate. A lot of people know him by that, but essentially he's built a community of, when I was checking, over 450,000 people across Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, right? And just doing that through inspiring, creating, and educating in what he does, which I'm going to let him talk about a little bit. Mohammad, welcome to the Nurture Network.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nilesh. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Fantastic. So why don't you just tell people a little bit about what you do? Because I kept it pretty vague there, but I think this story is quite cool. It's quite niche, which is something I love about you. So why don't you just give a quick intro into kind of the things you're doing today?
Yeah, so, okay. So my name is Mohammad, as you mentioned. There's two sides of me that really, I guess, are worth mentioning. There's more, but for the purpose of simplicity, I'll mention the two sides of me that I guess stand out. Number one is I have my 9 to 5. It's the things that I do when I'm at work. When I'm at work, my technical role is, like, if you go on LinkedIn, it'll be the systems specialist for the aerodrome at Heathrow Airport. So basically, I'm an engineer and I look after all of the systems that guide planes around an airport, and not just any airport, the busiest airport in the UK, which is Heathrow Airport. So I have a very technical day job where I'm looking after all these really cool things, and it means I get to do really, really amazing things. Going around the airfield, going up the control tower. Like just today, I was literally standing outside on the balcony of the control tower at Heathrow Airport. People don't get to do this, but I'm blessed enough to have a job that allows me to do all these cool stuff. And then by night, when I flip into like night mode, like Batman mode, I'm a motivational speaker. I create content about the airport and about the stuff that happens at the airport, but also I go into schools, I go into youth centers, colleges, universities, talking to young people, teaching them the nuggets that I wish I knew, and the nuggets of information, the nuggets of insight, perspective, whether that's about themselves, whether that's about the world around them, whether it's about how to tackle situations, their habits, their mindset, their goal setting, anything that I've felt like in my life has benefited me. Something that I genuinely enjoy doing is taking this complicated, like, framework or idea or perspective, chopping it up, simplifying it, and articulating it in a way that can give somebody that aha moment that just helps them gain more clarity and hopefully makes them a better person. That's what I love to do. So those are the two sides of it.
Amazing. I absolutely love it because when I see what you're doing, it's something that perhaps a lot of people want to try and do when they realize something that they truly enjoy and are trying to almost, start something from it, in terms of creating. This content creation game is something that's so popular nowadays. Everyone wants to tap into that, but perhaps doesn't know what to do or how to start. But the way you've grown into that, in the last couple of years, I guess I've seen it take off, is really, quite inspiring. But before we kind of, dive into that a little bit deeper, and, before you provide some tips on how people can get started in that space, I want to just find out a little bit more about your upbringing. I remember from our last conversation, I believe you grew up in Wembley, still live there today, if I'm correct.
Yeah, that's right. So Wembley was where I probably spent my teenage years. The pre-teenage years, I grew up in an area called Willesden, which is again northwest London. And then the first area I guess I ever lived in was more Kensington, but that was like a little council flat in Kensington. Then it became a council house further out in Willesden, and then now it's another council house further out even more, where I live with my parents. So yeah, that was my upbringing, man.
Okay. So tell me what Little Mo was like. Tell me a bit about that. That's what I'm curious about.
So I guess Little Mo was the cute fat kid who stands in the corner, doesn't make much noise, especially in school. Um, Quiet, shy, pretty like you might not be able to tell from the outside, but damn insecure like about everything. Um, yeah, just done everything they could to blend into the crowd. That's for sure. Like anything they could do to try and blend into the crowd to make them, avoid bullying, getting bullied, avoid any sort of confrontation of any sort. That's just they were the most go with the flow type of person, even when it was not what they want. Well, even when it was not what he wanted to do, not what I wanted to do. I would go with the flow. I don't want to talk about him like he's a third person. It was me. It's this. It is who I was, and who I've changed, but it's a part of me. And like for example, I'll give you a very prime example. I remember being in primary school playground. Everyone's playing football. Every single person's playing football. If you're not playing football, you're not doing anything. And I remember this, the first conscious memory I have is they asked me, which team do you support, Manchester United or Arsenal? Now, at that point, I genuinely didn't care about football at all. But I wasn't confident enough to say that, because then, well, you're just exiling yourself from any friendship at all. So I was like, I support Man United. Went with the flow to the point where I used to go home and revise 11 players just in case somebody asks me, because I didn't want to feel left out. So that was Little Mo. Little Mo was the kid who'd do everything they could to make sure that people can't pick on him by just completely blending into the background.
Wow. That's it's quite interesting to hear that now, because when I see you, when I listen to you speak, it's very much owning your own personality and trying to really be who you are and not be shy about it. So it's interesting to see how you've evolved from that. But to be honest, like it's kind of a similar situation for myself as well. It was very much trying to fit in. I would say I grew up in a predominantly white area. I was the only kind of brown kid in school. So the way I had to kind of navigate myself, I was very conscious about that. And it was really trying to kind of, you had to almost follow certain, I wouldn't say principles, but just generic societal concepts to try and, fit in. But now as you grow up and you've got the right role models, you start to find your path, and do that, right? So in that case, I mean, how did you shift your perspective and kind of evolve to the what you're doing today?
Hmm. That was a long, long, long journey. So the shifts only began when I was like 21 years old. So you can imagine that shy, insecure kid remained up until third year of uni. Like that's when that predominantly, like, there were some things that got chipped away from the edges of that, but I'd say that the core of that insecurity, the core of that lack of confidence remained till I was literally 21 years old. Um, but at the age of 21, this is how it actually happened, right? I started doing things that I wouldn't typically be doing, and there was one thing that really stands out as something I wouldn't usually do, and I started playing American football. Like you can imagine, for this overweight, chubby guy who didn't have much self-confidence. To join an American football team was so out of my comfort zone. And actually, funnily enough, I'm wearing the t-shirt of the football, like the hoodie. I just, by complete chance, I'm wearing the hoodie. So I joined the Brunel Burners, and I started to play American football. This is something that was completely outside of my comfort zone. Like, I wouldn't see myself playing American football, but you know what? Now I'm there. And when you're in an American football team, what you begin to realize is there are all these big, bulky lads who can like smash you down within a second. But the thing is that the team isn't just made up of these big, muscular guys. It's also made up of slender, fast, like guys. It's also made up of the really chubby person who you think doesn't play any sports at all. It's also made up of the people who look like me, you know, not that tall, but they're lower down, so they can do things that other people can't. And what I start to realize is that even though I look completely different to the person next to me, the thought of an athlete isn't necessarily what you look like. It's actually that each one of us has a different job on the field. So depending on how I look, depending on what I look like, I have a different skill set that I bring to the table. That started to like plant seeds in my mind. Hold on a minute. Being different isn't necessarily a bad thing. Actually, being different, maybe if utilized correctly, can be a strength. And I remember this, and I'm only starting to really piece this together now, but our American football coach, we used to train hard on 3 days of the week. We used to do Sundays, which was out in the field. We used to do Thursdays, which was out in the field. And we used to do Tuesday classroom sessions. And the Tuesday classroom sessions was more about mindset than it was, and tactics. So it was like a tactics and mindset session, but classroom was compulsory. You have to show up to classroom. And the thing is that in that session, that's when our coach would teach us about the fact that just because you look like this and you look like that, you have different responsibilities on the field, and we're going to place you in a place where you're going to thrive. These differences are key. So I started to realize, okay, hold on, maybe being unique is good. It wasn't until one day I saw one of the guys on the team, right? This guy was very well respected in the ranks of this American football team, but he would act an absolute fool half the time. Like, he didn't care about what people thought about him. He really embraced his uniqueness. He embraced the things that made him him. And if anything, he became a bit of a leader within the team just because he did not give a crap about what anyone thought about him. He just completely embraced himself. And I used to look at him and I'm like, how is this guy so confident? How is he able to live life so free? Because I was so shy and I used to portray something that I wasn't. This guy was portraying 100% of who he was. And as a result of that, people loved him for it. They loved him. He'd get invited to all the events. He'd get, first class access to everything. He was the guy. But half the time he's acting an absolute fool. But people, because he's being honest about it, people respect that about him. And I remember once we were talking, and I pulled him to the side. I'm like, yo, man, like, we just started chatting and going back and forth. And he explained to me his outlook on life, his concepts on life, that growth mindset, that ability to embrace your uniqueness. We also spoke about mindfulness. And I realized that this guy sees life in a completely different way to how I've been seeing life all my life. Like, my whole life, I have never had the perspective on life that this guy just described in the past 15 minutes. And it just blew my mind that there's somebody living like this. Meanwhile, I'm here sat in my shell, being so insecure, being so like just like no confidence, nothing. So I remember asking him, like, yo, like, where did you learn this? Like, how did you get these thoughts in your brain? Like, where did it even come from? And he was like, oh man, there's a book called The User Guide to Balance. And I remember I pulled out my phone there and then. I went on Amazon and I bought The User Guide to Balance. The User Guide to Balance is a book about mind, body, and soul, and about how to improve your mind, your body, and your soul. It's a book all built upon principles of personal development, and that's when my journey started to really open a whole new chapter. I started to learn about personal development. I started to learn about how to unlock a different side of myself, how to see my true potential and begin to embrace that potential and begin to realize it. And from there, like, the book was talking about mind, body, and soul. I only ever read the mind chapter, and then I went on for a massive tangent huge tangent into personal development, human psychology, neuroscience, neural pathways, habits, and the rest was history.
That's an amazing story. Like how curiosity and asking the right questions, you know, got you to start this journey, and acting quickly as well. You got the book right there and then. That's one thing that I
Yeah.
think a lot of us need to do a lot better. It's funny you mention it because I was literally speaking about this concept at work the other day. The 5-second rule by Mel Robbins. I don't know if you're
Mm,
familiar, but it's
mm.
like when you want to,
Yeah, yeah,
when
yeah.
you have a thought,
You
when you
got
want
to
to do
count down from
something,
5 and jump.
exactly, and it kind of reminded me, of that. But that that journey you've been on, right? How you started getting into personal development. It's one thing, you know, working on your own personal development, but now what you're doing, right? As well as being the airport guy, an engineer working at Heathrow Airport, you are doing motivational speeches at universities, at different venues, exhibitions, and really inspiring the next generation. Not necessarily about, just engineering, but just helping young people, or not just young people, anybody really kind of follow their passion, right? So, what did that take in terms of, you know, firstly developing like yourself, but then wanting to inspire others, right? That's a different ball game.
Mm, mm. It is. And you know what's funny? It's like this all came quite organically. Like it came organically, but with effort. And what I mean by that is this. I remember during that phase of my life, like 21, 22 years old, is when I'd be reading all these books. I'd be learning about personal development, and my mind was blown. Like, my mind was just euphoric. Like, 7 days a week, 24/7. I'm just in this state of euphoria because I'm learning so much. And when I'm learning so much, I felt like I couldn't keep it to myself. Like, I felt like I had just found a treasure chest, and I'm like, there's so much life changing stuff in here. I just need to share it. So whenever I be in a friendship group or in a circle of people, I'll be sat down and be talking, I'd somehow manage to steer the conversation in a direction to lead it towards personal development. And then I'd just pour my heart out about everything that I've been learning. And what started to happen, it happened once, it happened twice, it happened 3 times, is that people would be like, they'd listen while I'm speaking. And then they'd be like, yo, Mo, that was really powerful. Like, you should be a motivational speaker. Like that, the way you just explain that just makes so much sense. And I used to have like these moments. I'm like, what do you mean motivational speaker? Like, relax. I'm an engineering student, aerospace engineer. I'm gonna go work in a company to be an engineer. Like that was so far away from like anything that I thought I ever was. But the thing is that it kept happening. Like, it kept creeping up as like I kept hearing, you should be a motivational speaker. You should be an inspirational speaker. And what it started to highlight to me is that sometimes you don't recognize your own skills. It takes somebody else to tell you that you're skilled at something. And what I started to realize is that maybe, just maybe, I have some God given ability to take complicated things and simplify them and explain them in a compelling way. Just maybe. Now, if that's the case, what am I going to do with that new piece of information that I've just found out about myself? Am I going to sit here and just be like, nah, well, eh? Or am I going to recognize that, hold on, maybe I'm actually good at something here? And am I going to double down on it? Am I going to invest in this thing that I might be good at? And for the longest time, I didn't do much about it. And then until I was like, you know what? When I joined Heathrow Airport, this was about a year or so later. I read this book. I'm gonna show it to you. I think I've got it. Yep, here. Two books that I want to bring to light. So this is the User Guide to Balance that I spoke about earlier. So this is the book and this is actually the one. So it's got the original, all the notes and stuff that I had. This is the original one that I started reading that completely transformed my life. Now, the moment I recognized people were telling me, man, you're really skilled at this thing, you're really skilled at this thing, you have this strength, that is when I picked up this book. So Heathrow Airport actually bought each of us one of these books, and they gave it to us on our first week at the company. Now, this book is called Strengths Finder 2.0. And what it does is it helps you recognize what strengths you have. Now, not only does it do that, the concept in the intro of this book talks about how for the longest time human beings have been trying to always get better at the things that they're not good at. So every time you discover a weakness, you invest time and energy into making it better so that it's not a weakness anymore. This book was like, you know that? Screw that. Like don't spend all your time trying to make all your things that you're not so good at better. Instead, take that same time and try and make the things that you're already good at even better, to the point where you can become the best in the world at that thing. So with now, when I started to combine these two bits of information, right, and I started to think, okay, hold on. So I'm passionate and I love this thing, and now I'm being told that if I find something I'm passionate about and I'm good at, I should really invest time into making myself the best at that. I'm like, all right, okay, how am I gonna do this? Like now I recognize that this is something that's in me that I need to start putting out into the world. So I set up a page on Instagram. I was like, I'm just gonna make an Instagram page, and I set up an Instagram page called Motivate. And I remember I started to upload motivational quotes on there from Google. I'd screenshot a Google quote that I found inspiring, and I'd put it on there. And I put 1, 2, 3 posts on there. I put up one story, and then I didn't put anything else after that. I kind of just stopped posting up there. And it kind of died. I'll be honest, it died like 6 months. It just died. Didn't do anything with it. It wasn't until I turned it into more of a, let me log my journey as an engineer. Like, let me use this as a place where I can document my journey as an engineer. That's when I started to use this unfair advantage of being an engineer at Heathrow Airport to get my foot in the door of universities. So I used to send messages to universities saying, hey, I'm an engineer, I work at Heathrow Airport. Do you mind if I come and give a talk to your students? And they'd be like, yeah, come through. So I'd come through, but rather than give them a talk about engineering, I'd make it a talk about personal development. And they'd be none the wiser. By the end of it, their minds are blown. They're like, wow, we weren't expecting this. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I kind of just had to get my foot in the door to do this, but now that I'm here, hopefully that was valuable. And they're like, yeah, damn right, that was really good. Keep doing that. So I literally just kept doing that for ages, for like a year. I just kept doing that until people started to approach me saying, can you start doing stuff? So that was a long way of saying how I got to where I got to.
Wow. Again, I'm blown away just by you being curious and actually taking those necessary steps, because a lot of people, I guess it's not a natural kind of mindset to go and get what you want in terms of, I'm going to message this university to try and do this. And it can take, sometimes it takes a lot more, courage than it does for another person, right? It's all different, but it doesn't mean someone can't do it. But there was a few things that you mentioned in there that really hit home with me. And when you mentioned, right, a couple of your friends mentioned, okay, Mo, you should do motivational speaking. You should do some inspirational speaking. You've got a natural knack for this. And a lot of young people tell me, or not just young people, but a lot of people tell me, Nilesh, like, I don't know what I have to give. I don't know like what I'm good at. I don't know the value I can provide to people. And what I usually say is, one of the best ways to find out what you're good at is ask people, what they think of you, and sometimes it surprises you, because a lot of the things, I know I have a good friend, for example, who, for her, reading like data or like spreadsheets is like really easy. She can spot patterns so easily, right? And she doesn't realize like how much value, like how valuable that skill is. Because for me, I'll be looking at that like graph or a spreadsheet for about 15 minutes, and I'm like, I can maybe present one finding from it, and she can pull out like, okay, this means that, right? I mean, that's just one example, but a lot of people don't realize kind of their own skills, right? And that's the same case that you had. You have a natural ability to tell stories and inspire people, right? You have a captivating way of speaking, and perhaps you didn't notice that until it took a couple of people, mentioning it to you to actually, begin that. It's a similar case with me. People said, Nilesh, like, you're a good speaker. You should start a podcast, right? I enjoy having conversations with you. Um, you should start one. And you just put it off. Like, you're like, do I really
Mm.
have the credibility? Do I have the credibility to do that? I'm not a influencer. I don't have X amount of followers on, it's that whole imposter syndrome game, which I'm sure we all suffer from today. And I'm sure you probably, do, despite the audience you've built. How do you handle how do you handle that kind of imposter syndrome element, and just taking the leap and going for it?
I guess I've always been a bit of a daredevil, so that doesn't help. Like, um, in terms of like, I just take risks. I enjoy taking risks. Um, but it doesn't make it any easier. But the thing is that I've ever since I was like 16. This is a part of the story that I haven't mentioned, which is actually quite fundamental to this. Ever since I was 16, I used to recite the call to prayer in my secondary school. So I used to go to an Islamic secondary school, a private Islamic secondary school, where every day there would be the prayer or congregational prayer. Everyone would come together, and one person would have to stand up in front of the whole school and recite the call to prayer. Now, I was a 16-year-old kid who was shy and all that sort of stuff. But the thing is that I don't know what possessed me. I don't know why. I really can't pinpoint what possessed me to want to go up there and recite. But when I was there, boy, I was absolutely bricking it. Like, my knees were shaking so violently that you could hear it in my voice. Like, my chest would be shaking. I'm like that scared. I still remember there used to be a radiator right there, and I used to hold on to that radiator for dear life just to try and ease the shaking because I shake so much. I used to do that once, twice, three times, four times until the point where that became comfortable. Like, standing in front of my school and reciting a call to prayer became a comfort place. So, what I'm trying to say within that is that don't fear the fact that something's going to be scary. Like, don't avoiding something just because it's scary is you opting out of growth. The only way you're going to be able to grow is if you're willing to do the thing that scares you the most. Like that, like standing in front of the school and speaking and like doing that stuff genuinely was absolutely scary for me. I was that nerd kid in school who was like a bit of a teacher's pet, right? And all of a sudden I'm standing in front of all the cool kids, all the nerds, everyone, and I'm doing this thing that is a bit cringeworthy. We're all trying to be cool, we're all trying to be hip, but now you're doing the call to prayer, like, oh, okay, calm down, Mr. Religious. And I'm just there doing it, but nobody else was willing to do that. But like, I was willing to do it, and I feel like now when I look back, those were the building blocks for me. So what I'll say to people who are in that moment where they're really fearful of something is that remember that these steps are the building blocks for a future you, that you're going to be amazed at what they can achieve. Like, genuinely don't allow these small steps to be things that stop you, because if you do, then you'll never actually be able to get to that point over there. And if anything, like right now, I still try and seek out opportunities that are gonna make me scared. So, for example, I now have become quite comfortable speaking to people who are younger than me. I now want to get into a phase of my life where I start to speaking to people who are older than me on stage, not just people who are younger than me, right? I want to start talking to professionals. I want to start talking to industry leaders, not just people who are younger than me who are going to nod along and be a captive audience. So even for me right now, I'm seeking that uncomfort. I'm seeking that discomfort because I know that that's where the best version of me resides.
I love that. Another opportunity for you to grow and almost, reach that next level. I think it's something that we all need to try and do better. When we reach what happens is like, it's happened with me. You get comfortable with one thing, and you become really good at it, right? And if you're happy with that, you're staying there, then, so be it. But, you may as well, for me anyway, my ethos, my motto is, okay, I want to, keep getting better, or more so challenging myself to make life more exciting, because I think testing your limits is actually a really fun thing to do, because the feeling you have after like doing something scary is, after you've done it and people say, wow, that was really good. That feeling, is amazing, because you've had maybe weeks, months, or days, like minutes before, you're terrified of like public speaking in front of all these people. You do it, and the feeling for about, the next few days, however long, you feel on top of the world, and it makes you want to do more. You realize what you're capable of, which I'm sure, you've probably felt in what you've done. And how would you say people can do that, right?
Okay. Let me think about this. There's something that comes to mind, which I think if I start speaking about this, it will begin to make sense. It's an unformed thought in my mind, but let's go with this. I'm gonna tell you a story. Every single time I'm in the shower, before I leave the shower, I make sure of one thing, and that's that I reach my hand out to the hot water knob and I completely switch it off, which means that the only thing left coming out of the shower head is what? Cold, freezing cold water. Now, every time I'm about to go reach for that handle, I flinch. Something stops me. It's like, I really don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. It's warm, it's nice, it's a beautiful shower. Why am I going to ruin it by just turning this water cold and then gritting my teeth to stand in this cold water? Genuinely. So what I do is I flinch, I switch it off, and then I let the water run and I stand out of the way of the water. Yeah, I genuinely stand out of the way of the water. Then, now, the water's not touching me, it's maybe just touching my toes. What I do is I then think, okay, rather than telling my brain, okay, now you have to get into the cold water, all I tell myself is, Mohammed, I want you to move your left leg forward and take one step forward. Don't think about the water, just think about taking one step forward. So what I do is I reduce the intention of the action into the simplest form of a building block of that action. So I don't tell myself I'm going to get into the cold water. I just tell myself, take one step forward. What that does is it completely disarms the power that the scary thing had, because now I've simplified it into a very simple thing that I can do. And what happens is when you step into that, yeah, you're uncomfortable. It's like, it's really uncomfortable. But you kind of do it anyway. And then you're like, all right, okay, it's not too bad. Okay, it's okay. I'm all right. I'm alive. Now what I want you to do is I want you to move this one leg here and rotate yourself 360 degrees. And it's like, but like my back is still warm. Like my front is cold. Now my back is going to get cold. But you do it anyway. And what I do is I reduce the scary thing into just simple building blocks and actions. I get this sort of stuff with like emails and messages and stuff like that. The idea of sending a message to a university society is so scary. But all I tell myself is I want you to type up a message and press send. Like, don't think of it as like you're going to be reaching out and communicating with the society. Just say hello and press send. Make it as simple as you can. I am the laziest person you'll ever find. All I do is I take the 20%, I do the 20% bare minimum that will give me 80% of the results, and I try and do that as often as I can. So I know that sending that one message to a university might get one thing over the line, and I just try and reduce all the things that I do into the simplest of building blocks. And I let all the stuff compound around that, whether that's a cold shower, or that's sending a message. Genuinely, if you're the type of person who fears taking that step, I would highly recommend cold showers for the sole purpose. I know there's a lot of physiological benefits to it, but the only benefit I care about is that flinch. It makes you get used to that flinch and stepping into that flinch. Like you don't allow that flinch or that hesitation to stop you, because you already know that at 6:30 in the morning you just had a cold shower. Like that's there was no need for you to do that to yourself, but you did it anyway. Even the things that you didn't want to do, you've done anyway. So therefore, I know you don't want to send that email. I know you don't want to reach out to that person. I know you don't want to approach this person. I know you don't want to do X, Y, and Z things. I know you don't want to post a page. I know you don't, but you learn to just do it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Love it. You have such a great way of telling stories. Honestly, it's a God-given talent. I'm jealous. It's actually amazing. But honestly, I
Can I give you
think
my secret? Can I share it?
go go for it. Yeah, please.
The simplest way of explaining this to you, if you have any concept or any idea, the best way I've found to draw it in the mind of the person is you need to take them on a journey, but the most important part of that process is that you start off with something relatable. If you want to take them on a journey, but you're not even starting off in the same spot, they're already lost because you're not walking together. Like you're not walking through this together. So the reason why I said to you, when you're in the shower or when I'm in the shower is because you instantly know exactly what it means to be in the shower. So instantly, the imagery that you had in your mind, hopefully, yeah, wasn't me in the shower, but it was maybe you in the shower. But it was somebody in the shower, and like you could vividly imagine that. Like, yeah, okay, I know what it means to be in the shower. All that means is that we started off at the same spot. Now, every step of that process, all I have to do is I have to add on bits of the story that you and I can both agree on and that makes sense. So I'm not taking 2 or 3 jumps at once. I'm just adding one step at a time. It's as simple as that. And then what you do is you create an image of these little tiny steps, but you kind of leave something vacant in the middle. And that's when you drop the mic, you drop that kaboom moment in the middle that makes everything else click in place. But start off at the same spot, add one step at a time, leave something vacant in the middle, and then drop your piece right in the middle.
I love that. I'm going to start trying to do that more. I don't think I'm a bad storyteller, in fairness. I try to adopt a similar thing that you've just mentioned without me, knowing it. But I think that secret that you've just dropped is going to help a lot of people, become better storytellers. And one thing I wanted to add, in terms of, I've heard of the cold shower methodology, which it proves to work. I know there's a lot of research around that space. One thing I try to do, or which I'm doing more, and which I tell people to do more when they want to do something but are too afraid. I know it's going to sound super cliche and really, generic, but it's a constant reminder that I feel we all need to hear, is very much that mindset of, if there's something you really want to do, and you don't do it, think of yourself when you're 90 years old, you know, on your chair, just rocking back and forth. What could have been if I'd done that? How different could my life, you know, have gotten? Right? You want to live, with no regrets. You really want to kind of pursue the things that make you happy. I feel like if you don't do the things that are, you have a burning desire to do, you're depriving an element of your happiness there. You're just like, okay, it's fine. But
Mm-hmm.
even giving it a go is such a big step. Even if it doesn't work out the way you thought it would, I'm always a big believer in it will reward you in different ways. A lot of people maybe start
Yeah.
something, and then it doesn't work out, but they don't realize the skill that they've developed in that time. It's like, and you see it with entrepreneurs all the time. For example, people want to start a business. You know, when you speak to like business owners, the original idea they had, it never ends up as the same business because it's just changed throughout. People think it's like this really
Yeah.
linear path, but it's really not. But I always say, like, I have a friend currently, my best friend. I have my best friend at the moment, and he's been working on this business for a long time. And we have really interesting conversations, and sometimes he's like, God, Nilesh, like, I've been working for this on for so long, right? But we're still not where we want to be. And I just tell him every time, right? Think about 5 years ago when you started this, the amount of knowledge you've accumulated, the amount of people you've built in your network now, right? Even if this does not work out, you've learned a process, you've gained new skills, you've got people who you're connected with now. And people forget that, the journey, the process, you learn so much, right? But because you're
Mm.
already thinking about the end goal, and that it's a bit scary to think about, you don't even start. You don't even start, and there's like, it's such a shame. It's such a shame because, I mean, if I ask you now, Mo, right? If I ask you, you know, when you look at what you're building today and what you've built so far, could you have ever imagined it would have got to this point where you've literally got, a very large community of people following you for, the stuff you do around engineering, inspirational talks, etc. Would you imagine like having built this community after X number of years, 3 years ago?
Not even the slightest chance, man. Not even for a fraction of an imagination. Like, it's amazing when you think that the thoughts that you were thinking back then were on such a different spectrum altogether from the life that you're living now, and all that changed was those thoughts. So the only reason that you're living a different life is because you actively chose to change those thoughts. But like now, I think to my like now that I'm in this frame of mind, bro, I've set the sky as the limit. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if I achieve whatever I want to achieve. Like, now that I'm out of that bubble of insecurity and I've realized the abundance that this world has to offer us. Like, yeah, like if like hopefully when I'm on my deathbed, I'll have the same level of certainty of like, yeah, you know what? When I was 26 years old, I knew I could do it. I knew I could do this. Like yeah, yeah. I know life was good, and I'm grateful for the life that I had. But I believed in me, and I believed in me because I feel like you enter a new frame of mind where you don't set limits on yourself, and that's truly because of the people that I surround myself with. By the way, when you surround yourself with people who are willing to dream big, boy, does it change everything.
That's amazing. Again, that's very true. It's very true, right? You are the person, right, who you spend the most time with, right? You become that person. Absolutely agree with you on that. Because I've seen it in myself, both in good ways and bad ways, where
Mm,
perhaps I wasn't spending time with bad people. It was people that I just did not resonate with and were not kind of helping me go in the direction I wanted to. Right? It's just a different path. Not the wrong path, a different path that was good for
yeah,
them.
nothing wrong with that.
Um,
Mm.
That's actually a little topic, I'd like to talk about, before we wrap up, right? In this process of finding yourself and your passion, and actually getting to the point of actually building that community, it means, you know, sometimes sacrificing relationships, not completely, but the amount of time you spend with people, because even like some of my closest friends, or people I'm associated with, even maybe family, don't understand what you're trying to do. um and sometimes you can get some, not pushback, but some friction when you try and have these conversations with people, and they just they don't get it, right? And
Mm.
they don't get it, but the worst thing is perhaps they don't respect it. um have you
Mm.
have you had that before? And if you have, how have you dealt with that?
I'm lucky in a sense where I guess my family, first and foremost, the people that matter the most, they understand. I was talking to my mom about this yesterday, and she was like, "Yeah, I know you're always busy and you're out and about, but I've allowed you that space because I know that you're building your foundations." And she said that to me. She's like, "You're building your foundations, right? This is fine." I guess the people on the flip side of that are the people who I used to spend a lot of time with, right? And we used to just spend a lot of time doing nothing, just chatting the most. Yeah, not actually doing anything proactive, just having bants for days. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I loved that time of my life, like where I'd just be on the floor dying, like giggling like a little girl till the morning hours, and I was just having a great time with my friends. Now those people, what I don't like is when the way they approach you is as if you've outgrown them, and as if you don't want to hang around with them anymore, and as if you're doing it in a way where it's like, and they kind of go, "Oh yeah, you're too big for us now, innit? That's it, you're gone." And they kind of belittle the journey rather than as if, "Oh yeah, you've left us behind," and "Oh yeah, that's it, you're too big for us now." And in reality, you're like, "Nah, bro, like I love the time that we spent together. It's just that I've started to invest my time into things that I never used to before, and like this takes up a lot of time. Like it really does take a lot of time of my life. Like I'm building something here. These things just won't happen overnight. I've got emails to send off. I've got things to do. I've got podcasts to film. I've got content to make. I've got editors to speak to. I've got companies. I've got proposals to write. Like I can't just sit, just chill all the time. I can't." And they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah," but what really hurts me is the sly comments about, "Oh yeah, you're getting too big," and I know that comes, and I know for them that comes from a place of resentment, in that sense that I don't know. I don't know if it comes from a place of resentment. I know that they're supportive, but those comments sometimes they just have that dig that just isn't necessary, and that's what makes me feel like they don't respect the hustle as much.
I hear you. And yeah, I don't think there's a silver bullet answer with how to kind of navigate that situation. And it's more of, I think, if in my it might sound a bit basic, but if they're your real friends, they'll come around, they'll understand later on. That's the kind of
Mm.
thing I like to think. I will never put myself on a pedestal or belittle your journey. That means, regardless of where I am, like, please don't, please, I ask you not to judge mine, right? Work on yourself, and I want to help you do that, actually, because often for guys like
Mm.
you and I, we it's almost like sometimes we want to talk about these subjects and actually help our friends, like, on that journey. And sometimes I guess some people, like, are a bit defensive towards that. I don't need you to tell me, like like what
Mm.
I need to do. no, it's not that. It's a perspective. I'm just trying to be a catalyst for us to all, like, smash it. But again, like, we can't control everyone, and I guess it's a difficult one to navigate.
Such a good point, by the way, on that. Do you mind if I add something onto that as well, by the way?
Yeah, go for it, go for it.
You always find that those are the people who haven't taken the time to work on themselves, and they've still got the same dreams and goals that they had 5 years ago that they haven't actioned, that they're still working on 5 years later, and they haven't put a plan in action. Like, they're just stuck, and I feel sorry for them that they're stuck. I sympathize with that stuckness, right? But then if you see somebody who's doing well, don't it's not personal. Like, I'm here, I want to you find that the people who are also doing well for themselves and also trying their best are always happy to see other people succeed. It's only the people that aren't actually trying, who have this vision and this goal, but they're not really trying, they just have it. Those are the people that are a bit salty sometimes, because they also have a vision. They also might want to dream big, but they're not willing to put in the work. But when they see you putting in the work, they're like, oh, well, I have this vision, but it's not working out for me. But they don't realize that you're not even trying, bro.
Yeah, yeah. It's a really good point, and I'm going to be completely honest here. I definitely had an element of that prior to starting this podcast. After many people telling me to begin, I said I wanted to do it, but I just was not actioning. I was not actioning, and I was seeing, people like grow. It's all, people grow on socials now after seeing, like, I'd followed them early on, and now, they're absolutely killing the game, right? In terms of what they're doing. And I really had to be honest with myself and say, actually, I need to switch my mindset, right? When I see someone grow, you need to be happy for that person and use it as inspiration for you, rather than reverse it and have it the other way around, where it becomes jealousy.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Naturally, as human beings, we can sometimes get that. But as soon as you start making that shift, and now when I see, because I think I followed you since you had a relatively sizable following, but not like where you are now. And when I saw you start,
Yeah, it was probably like, I think it was like what,
those
three,
numbers creeping
4K.
up, and yeah, something like that. And then now to where you are, and also seeing your activity, that you're actually doing it because you love what you do. It's like, okay, wow, like that is actually really inspiring to see visually, like, how much the work you've put into it has actually paid off, and is paying off, and is continuing. So that's what I try. That's what I do now. That's what I think more people need to do. Everybody has their own clock. Don't try not to, like, look at where other people are going. It's the journey that matters, right? Regardless if you're the start of the journey, or if you're, you never end the journey. I feel, right? We're always just on the journey. I think that's one of the beautiful things about it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. There's an element in there as well, with regards to like that feeling of like, they're getting successful, but what about me? And I think that's, like you said, that's so natural. Like, that's so built into us as human beings. Like, our ego gets so bruised so quickly that we feel like, what about me? There's two elements. There's three elements actually that I'd love to touch upon in this. Number one is, there's this concept of it's not a zero-sum game, right? Do you know, like, this concept of it not being a zero-sum game? I didn't really understand until someone explained to me. A zero-sum game means that if I win, you lose. It's everything that I take, I have to be taking from somebody else. The thing is that this success stuff, like the number of followers, for example, or the amount of success, or the amount of speaking gigs, or this or that, there are unlimited number of these speaking gigs. If I get one, or if you get one, I never took yours and you never took mine. Like, there are unlimited numbers out there. It's not a zero sum game. It's not a what plus one minus one. If you can do a plus one, like, we can both win. And that's the concept of abundance. So that's the second point I wanted to get onto there. The concept of abundance. Like, when we have to really, really, really live our lives like this place is the most abundant place possible. Like, there is no such thing as that person has something that's mine, because there's so much more out there. We can all win. Every single one of us can win. There's never like you win, you're winning, and because you're winning, I'm losing. It's never like that. It's always an abundant world where there's so much more to get out there. And the last one is actually a saying that we have from an Islamic tradition, which says, I learnt that what was mine will never miss me, and what wasn't meant for me will never get to me. You have to really be at ease with the fact that if you put in the work, what's yours is not going to anyone else. You're going to get what's rightfully yours. And if there's somebody else that got something, just know that was never meant for you. That was meant for them. But what's yours is on its way. Keep putting in the work and you will get what is rightfully yours.
That's beautiful. I love that. You have to send me that saying, because that's a nice little mantra.
The last bit of that mantra that I forgot to mention is that I learned that what is for me will never miss me, and what was not meant for me will never come to me. Therefore, I am always at peace.
Wow. Wow. I love it. You need to send me that. You need to send me that
Yeah, I
for
will.
me to keep.
I will. Yeah, it's by a man called Ali ibn Abi Talib.
Yeah. Okay. I think people need to re-listen to that. So if you're listening on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, just go back 15 seconds and listen to that again, because that was really powerful, I have to say. But let's wrap up on something that I want you to share, because I've heard you say it before, and I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful analogy. So the Nurture Network is about, as I mentioned, inspiring people to realize their self-worth, their value, and to feel empowered enough to start the things that they've wanted to, right? And to pursue the opportunities that they've previously shied away from due to fear of judgment and lack of self-belief. That's our mission, right?
Mm.
Now, I've heard you say this analogy around a lighthouse, right? And building your lighthouse. And I absolutely loved that analogy, which I think we should actually finish this episode on, because it's so powerful in terms of the message it sends out to people. So Mo, please, I would love you to share the lighthouse analogy that I've heard you say before for everybody.
Sure. Absolutely. I'd love to do that as well. So the concept goes like this. Each one of us contains a light within us, a unique light, something that is a fire that is in our hearts, something that we're so passionate about, something that truly means something in our hearts. But the thing is that we spend a lot of our time building a facade, which we think that the outside world wants to see, and we present that side of ourselves to the world. And it's like as if we use bricks. We put one brick after the other, and we build this brick wall that hides the light that we have within, that fire that we have within us. And the thing is that we can spend so long of our lives hiding behind this brick wall, but we get to a point, and this is the point where you start to understand the value of what you have in your inside you, that light you have within you, is where you start to dismantle that wall, and you start to use those same bricks that you were using to hide yourself. Instead, now you're building your own lighthouse. Now imagine if you were an island. Imagine if you were an island lost at sea. Nobody knew that this island existed, okay? But all of a sudden, you became conscious that there was this light within you, something that means something, and you want to start telling the world that this island, this thing that I am, exists. How are you going to start doing that? Well, that's not going to happen behind the brick wall. The first thing you need to do is dismantle that brick wall, be willing to be vulnerable. And now you have to start to build your lighthouse. You put one brick after another, and then you get to the top of that lighthouse, and you finally have this light that it is time to share with the world. So what you do is you take that light and you put it out into the world. You say the message that means something to you. You try to do that thing that you've always wanted to try and do, and you put it out into the world. And you put it out once, and you put it out twice. You see, here's the thing about a lighthouse. If a lighthouse only ever flashed once, it loses all its power. A lighthouse isn't powerful because of how bright the light is. Powerful is that the lighthouse is powerful because of the consistency at which it shines. And when it shines consistently in that darkness, the boats that are on the horizon, that are in the ocean, see this beacon that keeps saying the same thing. It says that I am here. And imagine if that message was the thing that you are passionate about. There are boats out there that want to come towards that thing, because guess what? That thing that you're passionate about, that burning desire in your heart, that light within you, resonates deeply with them as well. So what those ships do is they reorientate themselves towards you, towards that lighthouse, because now you're spinning and you're telling the world that this place exists. You become a reference point for the people that care about what you care about, and you start to accumulate people towards you that don't want the facade. They don't want that fake version of you. They love the light that you have within. And the more people love it, the more that light becomes stronger and stronger. And before you know it, you have a community of people around you, a community of boats that's built a port around this island. You have a thriving community who are there for one thing and one thing only. They resonate with the light that you wanted to put out into the world. And had you never been brave enough to put that light into the world, there are thousands of people, those are thousands of ships that would have never realized that this reference point, this thing exists. You exist. And you can inspire them to be their own lighthouse and to go and put their own message out into the world. That is the story of a lighthouse, where there is a lighthouse within each of us, but we just need to be brave enough to build it, stand on top of it, and tell the world what we are.
I love it. Oh my god. I think I've said I love it after everything you've said today. But it's such a beautiful story, and I have to say, Mo, I think after listening to this episode, I feel people are really going to feel inspired to try and take that leap and start building their own lighthouse, because we want to see more of that happen in the world, right? There are too many people not doing that. And, you know, I just really hope that this podcast is going to, give them the urge, the tools, provide them with the tools to unlock, that little hidden thing that they've been hiding away for so long, and to really go and pursue what they actually.
Yeah. And you are the lighthouse for them.
Ah, well, thank you very much, Mo. I really appreciate that. But honestly, thank you so much for joining the Nurture Network podcast.
My
I
pleasure.
feel so inspired every time I speak to you. Since we, from that first Instagram video call after one of the podcasts we've been listening to having dinner with you in London, to actually sitting with you now, it's been amazing to actually see the journey and listen to you speak and continue to grow. And I'm hoping that I'm using you as a reference point, to grow in my own journey. The things that you say really resonate with me, and they're absolutely going to resonate with everyone who listens to this.
I hope so, man. That's what I pray for. I hope that we can be a beacon of light that inspires people, and that's all we can ask for.
Thank you. So on that note, thank you guys for listening to episode 4 of the Nurture Network podcast. It was an absolute pleasure speaking with Mo. And if you did enjoy this episode, please subscribe, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And please, give us a thumbs up, give us a 5-star rating. It helps the podcast. And I'm just looking forward to getting on the next episode, and I will see you